Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Olivia. You may also know me as the Carnivore Ballerina, and today I will be showing you how to sew a corset top specifically for a ballet costume, which I will be making. The pattern that I'm using I will have linked down below. I created the pattern myself. You can use any old corset pattern, but the problem with this is you just need to be aware that they usually flare out, they don't go in, and you'll end up with this weird amount of excess part down at this. So if you do that, you need to adjust the pattern to go in. So that is essentially it. You will learn how to make a corset top. This can be sewn onto a skirt, or you can somehow attach it with a tutu. I was trying to figure out what cloth I'm using, so there's a mess here. So we'll be using the blue though, because this will be a blue costume. So the costume cloth that I'm using is from a dress that I tore apart, and we're going to be recycling it. So yeah. We're going to take our cloth and fold it in half so that we can place the pattern piece that needs to be placed on the fold of the fabric, and we're going to pin the pattern to the fabric so that it's a lot more precise. And we're just going to simply cut. You want to cut about a ½ centimeter to 1 centimeter away from the pattern, just so that you have enough material, because you can never cut more, but you can always be left with less. So we want to make sure that it's fitting. I hope that made sense. And then we're going to unpin it, and as you can see, it unfolds into one big piece. And for the rest of the pattern pieces, we're going to cut all the way around, so we're not cutting on the fold. So you're just going to simply place them on double fabric so that you're cutting 2 at once, and pin it and cut, and it's as simple as that. I'm sewing a double layer, so I'm cutting with this also kind of see-through cloth, and I'm going to be double sewing it. So you don't have to do this. This is just because I'm sewing 2 pieces at once. Now what I'm going to do is I'm doubling this so that I have this nice thin layer on top and then a cover layer, because if not, then it's going to be completely see-through. So what I'm doing is I've cut absolutely everything out, and I'm going to have the right sides, because this will be the top. This is what you're going to see on the outside, and this part is going to be touching my skin on the inside. So right sides touching each other. I am going to place it like this, and I'm going to pin it from the top to the bottom. This is not really easy to pin because it is curved, but it's possible, of course. So pinning from the top to the bottom. Like I mentioned before, we're going to be pinning from the top to the bottom because we can always cut and fix the bottom if they don't line up, but we can never do that to the top. We want to make sure the top is perfect. And for sewing this, we're just going to be using a running stitch. I'm using pink thread so that hopefully you can see this. And we're going to go back and forth to create a knot, and then we're going to make sure you're pulling on the back of the fabric depending on how loose the fabric is. This also, of course, depends on the type of fabric that you're using, and always make sure that you're adjusting. Stop when you need to, and adjust and just sew with a running stitch. Simple as that. So once you're done sewing, you'll take out all the pins, and this is what it should look like. The right sides were touching each other, and we sewed it with a running stitch. And when you place it inside or right side out, this is what it'll look like. This is the top. We have not cut the neckline yet. I'm going to decide on that after, but essentially that's it. We're now going to just cut off all of this excess here because it's a bit much, and then we're going to either hem that, or you can use a zigzag stitch. A zigzag stitch just does it does exactly the same thing as hemming. So if you don't have a hemming machine, using a zigzag stitch is very helpful. But when you're cutting the edges, just be careful not to cut any of the stitching. So now we're going to be doing the bodice layer because we do need a bust lining. So I'm taking this somewhat stretchy, thicker cloth, and I'm folding it in half once again. And I'm going to take the bodice top, and I'm going to fold it in half. Place it here. I do want it to be a bit tighter, which is why we're going to ignore the fact that this is supposed to pop out. And essentially we're going to cut the exact same thing, just at a probably halfway or a bit above halfway level. Now we're going to do a very similar thing to before when we sewed on the panels, is we're going to touch right side together, so right sides touching each other. I'm trying to do this with one hand. And this one I made a bit longer because I am going to add another panel after this, but I wanted this to overlap a bit. Anyway, and we're going to pin it all around the top here, and then we're just going to sew a running stitch. And that's it. Very simple. I went ahead and pinned the neckline horizontally with the pins, and then I just went ahead and cut any excess material. I used a running stitch, by the way. So now that I've cut that and hemmed the edge, if I flip it right side out, there's a bust lining, and that is what the inside side will look like. And that's what the outside side will look like. And what we're going to do is we're going to pin the top here and either sew. I don't think that'll look so pretty though, so I think I'm going to just pin it and then hand sew at every stitching line where every seam is. I think I might just hand sew a bit. So you can go ahead and pin the whole thing and sew around the top. I think it's going to look neater if I just hand stitch it, just because of how loose the fabric is. I don't want to ruin anything. Before I go ahead and do that though, because this is not wide enough, we're going to sew, and we're going to cut and sew our last panel and sew that on. It's essentially doing the same exact thing, except we're going to take this bust lining and we're going to tug on it a bit more than we did on this. You don't necessarily have to, it's just to hold this section more in place. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and you'll see what it looks like in a second. So this is what it looks like. I added on the extra panels and I hemmed the top. I didn't sew it down yet because we're going to be putting a zipper here, and when we sew on the zipper we can just kind of go and do that all in one, so that it just simplifies life. And if I flip it over, you'll see that this is overlapping quite a bit. We won't have it overlap quite so much, about that much, because we do not want to see the white on the outside side at all. In place of completely stitching the neckline, like I mentioned, I just sewed on these little darts so that it was seamless, so that from the outside you don't see anything, and the inside it's just a couple little darts. So this is the top. I sewed two little tiny things here, which you saw me sewing earlier, because I didn't want to have the stitching going at the top because it just looks nicer, seamless. And then what I did for this last part is like what a lot of expensive dresses have, which is the inner hand-stitched hemming. And essentially I just hemmed the edges with a zigzag stitch up here, and then I hand stitched it. This is so annoying of me. I don't know if you can see that or not because the sun is in my eyes right now, but it feels good to be in the sun anyways. Yeah, and then I just hemmed that so that the inside is all nice and neat, and so is the outside, and you don't see it on the outside, which is very nice. Yeah, so what I'm going to go ahead and do now is cut the skirt, the absolute fun part of deciding the length and the design of the skirt. Since I'm using a torn apart dress that I had a while ago, I had to remove all the stitching from the dress and then turn it into the skirt. So if you have a normal skirt then, or no skirt, you would just either cut a circle skirt or just cut a skirt based off of a pattern or whatever shape that you like. I folded it in half just so that it would all be exactly the same, and I pinned the bottom and then I cut it to the shape that I wanted. You can it's very easy to kind of create your own pattern for the skirt. You can just go based off of what you see I'm doing, and then I aligned that with the rest of the fabric. I wanted it to be very high-low, and I just cut the front part as well, up and then horizontal. This was more of a very long rectangle, and that was the front. The back was more of a low drop. I realized that not everyone is going to have a old dress that they tore apart that they're going to try and put back together. So the easiest thing that you can do is cut a circle, get a full-on circle with material like this, and from there you just cut a hole in the center, and that's it. You can make it the same length. You can make the front high, low, the sides higher, whatever you want to do. What I did was I tore apart the whole dress a while ago and I turned the skirt into something else, and then based off of that something else that I did, I used that and I made it a high-low. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to gather the back because I think it'd be really pretty to have a gathered back, and then the rest I'm going to loosely gather. And you can either do this very easily by doing a running stitch and then cinching it, or you can actually do pleats. Pleats essentially would be taking the skirt and then you would just fold it over. So you have this big thing here and then you would pin it, and then that right there is a pleat. And I think that looks a lot neater, especially if you're making a dress, not a costume. And I might actually do that now that I'm looking at this. But before I do that, I'm going to cut off all this excess material that I have here, and also fix the the waistline because it's looking a tad weird. But yeah, essentially it is a very high-low. I think it looks pretty. I went ahead and fixed the waistline so that's very neat, and also cut off any excess material from sewing the front piece to the back piece. You can go ahead and do this as well. If you only cut a circle skirt, you don't need to do any of this, maybe just fixing the circle where your waist is, but that's about it. Yeah, and also hemming the bottom edge. Now for the pleats. You're just going to grab as much fabric as you want and pin it, as you can see that I'm doing. You're just going to fold the fabric over and pin it, and I just did a bunch of pleats on top of each other for the back part and then for the front, so that you have this really nice gathered back part. For the back and the front, I gathered a lot of pleats on top of each other and then pinned a couple loose pleats in between, and did the same with the front. I went ahead and sewed the pleats. I ended up doing a similar thing in the front as in the back. It'll look a lot nicer once it's attached to the top. I evened out the pleats by seeing how wide the bodice top was, so I just this is what it looks like if you're looking at the front, but I took the front and the back middle and grabbed them like this, and then I just checked if it fit with the top, and that was it. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and sew a zigzag stitch to hem around the whole top, and then in the inside as well with where I sewed. So I'm just hemming and doing all that fun boring stuff. Actually, now that I just said that, that makes zero sense. I'm not going to hem the waistline because it's a waste of time. Instead, I'm going to pin it to that, sew it onto the top, and then hem them together. That way you're doing two things at once, which makes a lot more sense than one thing. Yeah. Once you've sewn the skirt to the bodice top, you're gonna just flip it inside out. Also make sure you hem it, and you'll be left with something like this. As of this moment on me, without the zipper and everything, this is what it's looking like. I'm actually more impressed than I thought I would be. Obviously I'm wearing pants and a shirt, but you get the gist. It has a really nice pleating thing going on. Obviously it's all crumpled because, yeah, I'm wearing it on top of clothing. What I'm gonna do is go ahead and hem everything, and then we're gonna add a zipper in the back, which will go down the skirt as well as the top part. As you can see, the skirt opens up a bit, that way you can actually zip it on and off easily. I think a zipper is just the easiest thing to use. And either this can be worn with a skin color leotard under, or we'll just make leotard bottoms and attach it in the inside eventually. So yeah, I'm really proud of this. I went ahead and hemmed everything, including where the zipper is going to be. Now, what we're going to do later on, once we finish off a lot of this, I realize the sun is in my eyes, but it's amazing because I have not been getting enough sun. Anyways, what we're going to do is we're going to eventually iron this out with a very low heat to not burn it, because this is obviously a synthetic material, which is not the best thing ever, but okay, it's what we got. What I'm going to do is sew this so-called invisible zipper on. These are not the easiest to sew. This one is very long, so it's going to be kind of wasteful, but that's what we got. Yeah, pretty straightforward. If you don't know how to sew on a zipper, it is not the easiest thing, especially a invisible one. What we're going to essentially do is flip this So the dress or whatever you're sewing it onto is right side out. The dress is facing right side out, and this is the inside side. You can see I hemmed the whole thing. You can do a nicer job with the hemming machine, but if you're stuck with just a zigzag stitch, it works. It does the job. What we're going to do is have it facing the right side out, and we're going to take the zipper. Obviously, we're going to have to end up cutting it, and then you can burn it at the end so that this happens here where they essentially did that. They burned the plastics together so it's fused. We'll be doing that after. What we're going to do now is unzip it just because it makes the process so much easier. And we're going to turn the zipper. This is what it will be looking like. Oops. And we're going to flip it this way. So we're zipping it on. We're pinning it on so that when we sew it and it's done, it'll be flipped back this way and it'll be almost invisible. I hope that made sense. You'll just get a very quick version of me pinning it on so that you get an idea, and this video isn't endless. The nice thing about a very long zipper is that you can have it completely unzipped and you can pin both and sew them both very easily. Once again, make sure that you're pinning with putting the pins in horizontally, this way that you can leave the pins in while you're sewing. One thing to mention is you need to switch out the foot of the sewing machine. All sewing machines come with this extra foot. It just makes it so much easier to sew a zipper, and you just attach it on easily to whatever side that you need to. We're just sewing this with a running stitch, and you stop whenever you need to readjust the fabric so that you don't have to pull out any stitches and resew. Go as slow as you need and make sure that every stitch is neat and tidy. I thought it made a lot of sense to share this part after the sewing. So this is what it looks like on the outside side. It'll look nice and neat and basically invisible because we're flipping this to that, and all you see is the zipper right now, which is very convenient and it doesn't look ugly. It is very bright. You could pin it down and sew it. Once again, I'm going to do the invisible hemming so that you don't see that, like how what I did with here. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and then at the top we're going to just pull that down, hand stitch it in, and then we're going to add a clip, the circle and then the clip, so that it stays zipped all the way to the top. And since we have such a long zipper, the longer the zipper the better. What we're going to do is we're going to, I think I have to flip it this way. If I zip this all the way through, it'll zip up like that, but we're stuck with this huge thing here. So what I'm going to do is cut it roughly an inch just to be on the safe side, and I'm going to stuff that in. There's going to be a tiny little hole here at the bottom because we didn't sew it across yet. Stuff that in. This is not easy unless you have a bigger hole, which I did not leave a bigger hole. The smaller the better, because then it's less to have to actually either hand stitch or stitch up. That's what it looks like right now. It's not the cleanest, but we're going to go ahead and either hand stitch or not hand stitch that. I flipped the costume back inside out, and then I just stitched at the bottom where the zipper hole was, where we flipped it inside out, or we flipped the zipper through this way that it would be neat and it would be attached. In the next clip, it's you can't see that. I didn't sew it. This I did later on in the day. I just wanted to do it when I had better lighting. And then this is what the zipper looks like. I'll be explaining this in the next clip. In the inside, I used the same invisible stitch, and it looks nice and neat on the outside as I did on the last side back panels. Is a clean zipper, and we're gonna hand stitch the inside down. As well as these flaps here that look really stupid. So I'm gonna hand stitch all of that, and that is probably it. This is it. I'm not gonna sew on the straps. If you want to, you can. You can just take a bra strap and even use that, or I have skin color material, or even the elastic stretchy point shoe. So if you use stretchy point shoe straps in place of ribbon, you can even use that just because it is more of a skin tone, even though it is pink. This is what it looks like. I'm actually really impressed with how this turned out. I think it looks really nice. I tried it on and it looks nice. I'll probably put it on and show it off at another point in time because I'm just too lazy to put on a leotard and this and make it look nice right now. So this is where we're at. I will make another video on how I'm going to decorate it, because if this is a costume, it needs decoration. This needs something. You can obviously wear a leotard under this or sew on a half leotard. I have leotard patterns linked below, and you could essentially just purchase that and then cut off the top part, and then you would just sew it onto the hemming of the waistline and the inside. You can do that with just a couple dart stitches or hand stitch it all the way through. Yeah, this is what it looks like. The strap is very basic. You would just sew it here because you'd want to continue with the line of the seam, and then you would just measure how low it is on your back and then either bring it down to the middle or to the other seam, wherever you want to place it, crisscross, doesn't matter. Yeah, obviously it's unfinished at the moment, but that's because it is better and easier, in my opinion, to sew the straps after all the designing is on, just because if it is uncomfortable because of the stitching here, I can cover that a tiny bit with straps. So yeah, that is how I made this. Yeah, check out my previous video on how to sew a tutu, and I'll be sharing how to sew a leotard, how I'm designing a leotard for a costume, and other costume stuff, because costumes are expensive. Costumes are very pricey. So if you can make them, or if I can make them, you can make them, and you save money and you can brag about it. Yeah, so thanks for watching, and I hope this was helpful.